So general definition, a practice or training session where athletes practice different movements, sport contexts, and situations. So variable practice, okay? So we can say, let's use the long jump for example, and we're practicing a jumper's accuracy to the board. As discussed earlier, we could do various things when we're operating under this type of practice schedule. We can have the jumper jump before the board, right on the board, or past the board. Okay? So this can be controversial at times because ideally a foul isn't something that necessarily counts. But in training, we're not necessarily, the mark doesn't count. We don't break world records in training. We don't get championships in training. So what we're trying to accomplish here isn't necessarily a good performance, is we're trying to accomplish, or we're trying to develop what one of the abilities that Mike was referring to when he says there's a lot is the ability of accuracy, okay? The ability of developing your perceptual motor workspace. So that's variable practice. Here are some examples here. This is what we actually have some of our jumpers do. And I think they were a little bit surprised. Mike might be able to elaborate more on this, but when I spoke to them, they're a little bit surprised about the different positions. Actually, this is the variable position here. So we'll have them jump on the board. Oh, actually, sorry, excuse me. There's supposed to be a picture of a foot before the board, on the board, and just past the board. So those are the types of drills that we do, or that's the type of variation that we create. So I have them do 3 different things in their accuracy training. 3 different things: on the board, in front of the board, and behind the board. Those are 3 things. We can increase it. We can go 5 inches in front of the board. We can go 5 inches past the board. So we can increase the number of variations to as many as we want. How many variations should we include? I'll get to that when I introduce the framework, because there is a set number that you want to stop at before things kind of get messy. So constant practice right here. This is an example of constant practice where it's just the same position on the board over and over again. So I apologize about that image. So I'll just cut to the chase. Motor learning research. Okay. We'll say variable practice is better for learning than constant practice. And what I mean by learning, this is what I mean by learning. Practice situation to a competition situation. Practice situation to a test situation. What carries over the best? What carries over the best is this variable practice type of learning situation. So why does it help? Development of that perceptual motor workspace. So giving your athlete the menu to say, this is right, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. I get to choose what's right because I know how to do what's wrong. If they know how to do what's wrong, they know how to do what's right, then they can pick and choose, at least from generating a specific motor pattern. So that's the kind of the way that I like to describe that. And another way that it also helps is that we're not only training variation, or we're not only training accuracy, but we're training the ability for an athlete to cope with different changes that might occur in a competition setting. So Dan said it very well. You might have wind on one run and you might not have it on another. You might practice or train on a slow runway but get to the competition site and be on a fast runway. So you have all types of changes that you might encounter. It could be different weather. So no matter what we do in training, and I highlighted this before, we're always going to have a different competition environment. So what do we do, okay, as coaches, as practitioners, to develop our athletes to be able to cope with these changes? And that's what these variable practice type situations do, is they actually help our athletes to cope with different changes in the environment. All right, so aspects we can change, or aspects of practice we can vary. We can vary movements. So with the throws, we can vary release points, whether they be the optimal release point or not. We can vary these. Posture when running mechanics. So we can vary the actual movements themselves. The ideal is that we just don't vary a movement and not tell our athlete anything. We'll teach them, we'll instruct them, or we'll show them what the proper posture is, and say, let's go a little bit more pelvic tilt forward, a little bit more pelvic tilt to the rear. But ideally, in an instructional situation, they know, or you specify what the right position is for them, and then they can kind of explore and get to know the different positions around that correct position.